Hello, Facebook friends. Thank you for joining the Sisters of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Chicago Metropolitan Chapter. And we welcome you to Advancing Your Career, a power lunch with Carla A. Harris. Today, we'll be focusing on advancing your career. We would like for you to tag your friends, especially those who might be between positions, looking to upgrade their current position, and just looking to find out some information. What we want to do or ask you to do is please send us some hearts, show us your love, show us some applause. And if you know how to work those emojis and you can find a pearl necklace, why don't you drop one of those as well? Once again, we are speaking about advancing your career. So to give you a little insight on who Carla A. Harris is, she's the Vice Chairman, Wealth Manager, Managing Director, and Senior Client Advisor at Morgan Stanley. She has extensive industry experience that ranges from technology and media to telecommunications and healthcare. Carla has degrees from Harvard University and Harvard Business School and numerous honorary doctorates. Hey, Dr. Carla. She is the chair of the board of the Executive Leadership Council and the Morgan Stanley Foundation and sits on the boards of many philanthropic organizations. To top it off, Carla A. Harris was appointed by President Barack Obama to chair the National Women's Business Council, has appeared as a guest on CNBC, orated TED Talks, has written 2 books on winning, and is also an accomplished gospel singer. You may have seen our guests on Holidays from Harlem with Carla Harris and friends. Before we begin, the Sisters of the Chicago Metropolitan Chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, along with our Madam President, Dreama L. Waldman, would like to thank Morgan Stanley for providing 50 copies of Carla's book, Strategize to Win, the new way to start out, step up, or start over in your career. And we are honored Carla A. Harris has blessed us with her presence today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the incomparable Carla A. Harris. Carla, please preface today's Q&A with a 15 to 25-minute overview on what our listeners should do to advance their careers. Take it away. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tia, for that introduction. And hello, Facebook family. Hello, National Coalition of Black Women, the Chicago chapter. I am so pleased to spend a few minutes with you today to talk about how to advance your career, because my 2 words for 2021, thrive and accelerate. Thrive and accelerate. So here's a time where you can markedly increase your success in the seat that you are in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. Send us those questions, send us those hearts, like Tia said, give us an amen every now and then. So let me get started. I want to leave you with 3 pearls today. The first one, and this one's very important, and it is in the book, Strategize to Win. There are 2 types of currency in any environment: performance currency and relationship currency. But I want you to think to yourself that a dollar is not a dollar, is not a dollar. Performance currency is the currency that is generated by your delivering that which was asked of you and a little bit extra. Every time that you deliver above someone's expectations on any kind of assignment, you generate performance currency. It works just like the stock market. Anytime a company says to the street that they will deliver 25 cents a share in that quarter, and that company delivers 40 cents a share, that stock goes straight up, and so will yours. Performance currency is valuable for 3 reasons. Early on in your career, early on in any new environment, it will get you noticed. It will create a reputation for you. Number 2, early on in your career, early on in any new environment, it will get you paid and promoted. And number 3, it may even attract a sponsor. Now, let me pause here, because this is an important thing for you to understand. And there's a pearl inside of this pearl. A sponsor is the most important relationship that you will ever have in your career. There are 3 critical relationships in your career: an advisor, a mentor, and a sponsor. An advisor is anybody in your environment that can answer any kind of question that you have. Oh, Tia, I'm going to be working with Kimberly. Can you introduce me to her? I want to get to know her before we start this project. Oh, Garland, I really want to understand how you all estimate the weighted average cost of capital. I think you do it differently than I did it in my old firm. Those are examples of discrete questions that you could ask of anybody that has the experience or the knowledge to answer your question. A mentor is the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. And people often confuse what a good mentor is. This is the person that you can share the intimate details of your career with, your fears, your concerns, your mistakes, your triumphs, your strategies. I'm in this box. I want to be in this box. Who do I work and how do I get there? So by definition, the person that you're giving the mentor title to, that person must know you very well. You can't just choose somebody and say, oh, Diara has been doing this for 20 years and she's successful. She's going to be my mentor. Because if she doesn't know you very well, she cannot be a great mentor to you, because a mentor's job, and listen closely, is to give you tailored advice, tailored specifically to you and to your career aspirations. If I know Drima and I know Diara and they both want to become executive vice presidents and I'm a good mentor, I will give them two different strategies because they are two different women. And my job is to give them tailored advice that they can successfully execute. Your mentor does not need to be within your organization, nor do they need to look like you. They just need to understand your context. They need to understand the context that you're working in order to give you tailored advice that you can successfully execute. Now, here's the secret. You can survive a very long time in your career without a mentor, but you will not ascend in any environment without the sponsor. The sponsor is the most important of the three relationships. I said earlier that the mentor was the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is not the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is the person you tell the good, and the good, because this is the person that is carrying your paper into the room. This is the person that behind closed doors will argue passionately on your behalf as to why you should get the great bonus, why you should get the promotion, why you should get the next great opportunity. Make no mistake, this is the person that is spending their valuable political and social capital on you. So if you have great performance currency in an environment, then naturally a person might be attracted to you and want to sponsor you. But for many of us on this call, it doesn't happen that easily. Sometimes you must exercise your power and ask for a sponsor. And if you have great performance currency in that environment, it heightens the probability that that person will answer in the affirmative upon your approach. But here's the deal about performance currency. Early on in your career, it's worth about $1.50. Over time, that $1.50 starts to experience diminishing marginal returns, and that $1.50 works its way right back down to $1. Why? Because now you have established a new standard of excellence. Everybody knows that you will do a great job. Everybody expects that you will always deliver. So there's no longer a premium associated with your deliverable. The currency that's now most important is the relationship currency. Relationship currency. And it's frankly worth about $2.25. And it never experiences any diminishing marginal returns. Relationship currency is the currency that is generated by the investments that you make in the people in your environment. None of us work in a silo anymore, ladies. We're all working in highly interdependent environments. So at a minimum, you must have a relationship with every seat that touches your seat. If the only person that knows that you're doing a great job is your boss, then your ability to ascend is going to be vulnerable. Why? That person may leave the organization. They may lose their seat at the decision-making table, or they may lose their juice. So it's your job to make sure as many people as possible in the organization is aware of your outsized contribution. Here's the real reason why relationship currency is so valuable. Your ability to ascend in any environment will be a function of somebody's judgment. Judgment about whether or not you're ready. Judgment about whether or not the team will follow you. And judgment about whether or not you will ultimately be successful. And ladies, judgments are directly influenced by relationships. And if you aren't with me yet, I'm going to give you my last piece of evidence on this pearl. Everybody on this call has power, hard-earned, personal, influential currency. But I ask you, how many of you will use your hard-earned, personal, influential currency on somebody that you do not know? Now, obviously, I can't see you, but generally, when I'm standing on a stage in front of 1,000 people and I ask that question, nobody raises their hand, because that's right. There are little to no people that will use their hard-earned, personal, influential currency on somebody that they do not know. So remind yourself, when you are convincing yourself that you are an introvert and it's so hard to connect with those relationships, or you're just going to put your head down and do your job and you're not going to, deal with all those relationships, remind yourself that your inability to ascend in any environment will rarely, if ever, be a function of whether or not somebody likes you, but it absolutely will be a function of whether or not somebody knows you. While your performance currency may get your name on a short list that's being discussed behind closed doors, when your name is called, if nobody in that room can speak on your behalf, they simply go to the next name on the list. And it has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to do the job, but everything to do with whether or not somebody in that room knows you well enough to speak up on your behalf. Oh yeah, Tia, she's outstanding. Oh, De'Ara, she's our best relationship person. She's the right person to give that tough client to. Oh, Kimberly, absolutely. She can walk through the walls and she'll take the team with her. Notice there were no numbers associated with that. All qualitative comments that are a function of people's interaction with you. So your job in 21 is to build the relationships. And if you don't want to build them broadly, at a minimum, build the relationships with every seat that touches your seat. Now, this next pearl that I want to give you really quickly so that we can get to Q&A, it's really all about leveraging your voice. I know that you have heard this before. You don't ask, you don't get. Or as we generally say in communities of color, a closed mouth doesn't get fed, right? So here's the deal. You must leverage your voice. The organization needs to understand what you need in order to be successful. And so often I find that women, and certainly women of color, we work really hard and we're waiting for somebody to tap us on the shoulder and say, oh, Kimberly, you would be good in X. Oh, Dreamer, are you interested in doing Y? Ladies, if you are walking into that organization every day, you should be thinking about it like an owner. You should be thinking about where are the opportunities. You should have your own plan, which I talk about in Strategize to Win. Everybody ought to have an agenda. And an agenda has two pieces, the seat and the house. The seat is the job that you're doing. And the questions around that seat, what skills do I want to get? What kind of people do I want to meet? What kind of networks do I want to build? How is this seat going to enable me to get to another seat? How do I want to get compensated from this seat? And the house is where you are prosecuting the seat. Why do I like this organization? Do I have a voice? Do I have a sponsor? Can I get a sponsor? Do I like the career trajectory? Do I like the platform? You should be thinking strategically about every move that you make with respect to your career. Don't just take a job to get a job. And I know there are times when you say, I need a job, but be thoughtful about why this one versus that one, and trust your power to be thoughtful. If one comes to you that's not quite right, then you got to know that that's a signal that the one that you want, it's coming, right? So trust yourself and trust the one that's looking out after you. Now, it's important that when you are going through your evaluations, you approach your evaluation 1/3 of that time should be about what you did this past year. 2/3 of that time should be about what you want to prosecute going forward. This is the time to leverage your voice. You should never go into an evaluation like this, waiting to hear, quote, what they are going to say. You should have your own assessment about what has transpired this year, what you did well, what you did that was way over anybody's expectations, and where you might have fallen short, and what you could have done differently if you had resources from the organization. So you should be thinking proactively about that. And in that conversation, if you are looking for a promotion, it is my best advice that you ask for the promotion almost a year before you think you're ready. So you go into that evaluation, you say, I'm looking forward to getting promoted next year. And the person, if they're not planning to promote you, will say, I don't know, you might want to think about that a little differently. And why is that important? Because if they're not planning, if you're not online to get promoted, you want to know that. And you want to know what it is you need to do to have a different outcome 12 months from now. So you should always provoke that conversation. And when you're looking for a new opportunity, you should be clear about the content. You don't wait for somebody to tell you or say, well, I don't know what's available. You should be actively involved in your career and looking around the organization. And if you don't know what's available, now is when you take 15 minutes of coffee with that one. Say, oh, Tia, tell me about your area. What are you guys doing? I understand you guys are growing. What are the key success factors for what you guys do every day? What don't you like about that? And now that we're in the Zoom environment, everybody has to communicate this way. So email somebody and say, Tiara, I wanted to have a cup of coffee with you before we went to this shelter in place protocol, but can you give me 10 minutes on a Zoom? And if you're Zoomed out, not a problem. I'll be happy to do a 10-minute phone call. And that's how you start networking with people to figure out what is out there, what's available, and what's the profile of somebody who would be successful in that role. Now, that is something I'm going to task you with in 21. If there's a role that you want, you need to ask for it. If you don't know how to ask for it, practice in the mirror. Practice with a friend until you go in and the conversation goes like this. Dan, I understand that you guys are looking for somebody for that particular role. I'm really interested in that role. Now, I like what I'm doing now, but frankly, I think I can make a bigger contribution to the organization if I had an opportunity to prosecute that role. And the things that I've done in this role, I think A, B, and C will enable me to hit the ground running in this next opportunity. How are you thinking about that? That's your narrative, ladies. So I could go on and on and on. As you can see, I'm just a little bit passionate about this, but I really want to hear the questions that you all have and that Tia has for me. And I'd be more than willing to answer any question that's on your mind. Trust me, after 3 decades on Wall Street, there's no question that you could ask me where I will not be able to give you a prescriptive answer. So let's go.
All right, that was wonderful. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot of requests to be a mentor. I would like for you to be mine. But the first question that I'd like to ask, and it deals with what you mentioned already, as far as reaching out maybe via Zoom, right, to build those relationships. So what we like to know is, what is the best way to build relationship currency within your organization, considering we are in a virtual environment? So you did mention Zoom, but are there any other approaches?
Well, I have to tell you, Tia, I believe that this shelter in place environment has actually created a level playing field, because before COVID, you might have been in the office and you might have seen Tom talking to Peter, and you might have been a little bit intimidated about approaching them. So just watching what was going on might have been the thing that would have created an impediment. But now everybody has to communicate this way. The other benefit is that everybody is reading everything. Everybody's reading their emails, right? So now you don't have to worry about somebody traveling like I used to 4 days a week, and I might miss a few emails, right? But now everybody's reading everything. So you have an opportunity to grab that and say, hey, listen, Dan, I'm interested. It really just takes the action to do it and then follow through. My next piece of advice is that when you get somebody that will engage, stick to your word. Don't try to take 10 minutes and make them 30. When you get to 9 minutes, say, listen, I'm a woman of my word and I want to earn the opportunity to talk to you again. So we're at 9 minutes. I want to honor your time. I told you 10 minutes and I'm going to leave it at 10. Now, if they have unlimited time or they are really enjoying the conversation, they might say, oh, I got another 5. Right? And then you can take advantage of that. But the key, Tia, is to be intentional about it. Write down the 5 people that you wish you had a relationship with or that you'd like to have a relationship with. And if you really don't have any relationship, think about who you know that might make an introduction for you via email, and then go for it. And then if you don't know anybody that knows that person, then go ahead and take the shot on the cold call or the cold email.
Okay. Thank you for that. So some of the tidbits that I think I heard you say is about, of course, having a mentor versus a sponsor. And when you have a mentor, you're clearly can be your authentic self, if you will. But it's almost sound like if you have a sponsor, you might want to, kind of deviate from being your authentic self. But let's consider this. How is being your authentic self a career advantage in
Yes.
a brick and mortar or virtual environment, if at all?
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for that question, Tia, because I wanted to give that pearl and I was watching the time and I didn't want to take too much time away from the Q&A. So let's talk about authenticity because it is chapter 1 in my first book, Expect to Win. I think your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And anytime you're trying to speak or behave in a way that is inauthentic to who you really are, that's when you create the competitive disadvantage because you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what that person is saying, yet is not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to demonstrate a quick twitch response or to co-create in the moment with that person on the other side of the conversation. And here's a tip. As quiet as it's kept, most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their skin, they will gravitate towards you. They absolutely want some of that. So here's the key to bringing all of you into any environment, because most people say to me, oh, I can't take the real me into the office because they can't take the real me. Here's the key. Here's how you do it. First of all, understand who you are. And I don't say that lightly, Tia, because most of us don't take the time to say, well, who am I today versus who I was last year versus who I was in 19 or 2012, right? Who are you? The second, understand that we are all multifaceted. There is an intellectual you, there is an experiential you, there is an argumentative you, there's a pensive, thoughtful, creative you. We're all multifaceted. And then the third tip to bringing all of you into any environment, now you can relax. If you know who you are, and you understand that there are facets, you can relax and meet people where they are. You don't have to go in there saying, how do I need to stand, behave, speak, so that they think that I know what I'm doing or that I'm really impressive. You can relax and go and in the moment, as you are interacting with that person, you can decide what part of you authentically, what facet of you will authentically connect with that person or the people that are in that room. You can feel the energy in the room. And trust me, I've been in enough rooms to know that that is true. And when I don't, pre-plan or presuppose, then I can really hear where people are coming from. I can really sense what kind of personality I'm dealing with. And I can decide, is it the intellectual Carla? Is it Carla the singer? Is it Carla the golfer that's going to show up? Is it Carla the mother that's going to show up? Is it Carla the intense person? Or is it Carla the laid back person? All of those are Carla, but I can decide what part is going to connect at that moment authentically.
Thank you. So you're saying it's okay to have multiple personality disorder at times.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. And people have said that, and it's not a different personality. It's just it's a different part of you. But the reason why it's your edge, right, is that nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And the mistake that we make, Tia, and I'm sure I got some amens out there in our virtual land, is that the temptation is that I need to speak like Cecilia. I need to act like Bob because that's what it seems like they like. That's what we convince ourselves of. But at the end of the day, your edge is to be you because you can never out Bob. You can never out Cecilia. So trying to be them puts you at an automatic disadvantage. Be the best you in the environment that you are in.
Thank you. So I want to actually go a little further with this topic, right? And you kind of spoke on some of the topics or instances, but I want to clarify it for our audience. So are there strategies for managing risk as we begin displaying authenticity in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I'm a big fan of taking risk, which is another pearl. That's chapter 7 in Expect to Win. I do believe that if you want to get ahead, you have to be comfortable taking risks, because it says to the marketplace that you are comfortable with change. And the kind of risk that we're talking about as it relates to authenticity is the risk of exercising your voice. And I'll give you a basic mama piece of advice, which is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So you always want to make sure that you're communicating in a way that your listener will hear it and embrace it and act upon that. So even if it is a measure of speaking truth to power, and you feel like it is a risk if you say the thing that needs to be said and authentically you think you ought to say it, then I want you to stop and think about what's the best way I can articulate this so that it's going to be absorbed and accepted by the room. And sometimes that is framing it in a question. So let's say somebody has said something that you think is just wrong. It's just wrong. So now you want to say, okay, let me play devil's advocate on that for a second, just so we can pressure test it before we head out to market. Suppose we think about it X way, or another way you can pose it where it will be accepted by the room is like a question. Have we thought about X though? Whatever X happens to be. That's another way to introduce the idea into the room authentically, but in a way that it will be absorbed and embraced by the room. That's one way of mitigating the risk instead of just coming out and making a statement as if somebody else is wrong.
So it almost sounds like you are telling us to implement what's called appreciative inquiry, right? Where if someone makes a statement, then we're saying, hey, I think I heard you say, or, it would, be a good idea maybe if this is what I understand you mean. Is that where you're going with that a little bit?
Yep, I think that's fair. That's a fair way to put it.
Okay. The next question that I'd like to ask is, share your thoughts on the best way to train others on how to think about you when you are not in the room. Now, this is one I've been wanting to know for a long time. How do you train people to think about you?
Absolutely. I'll tell you, that's chapter 4 of Expect to Win. And that's the chapter that says perception is the co-pilot to reality. How people perceive you will directly impact how they deal with you. So when you want to train people to think about you in a certain way, think of 3 adjectives that you would like people to use to describe you when you are not in the room. And those 3 adjectives, Tia, ought to be 3 adjectives that are consistent with who you really are, and 3 adjectives that are also valued in the organization. They must also, however, be consistent with the seat that you are in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And the way that you train them is that you have consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And you use this language in your environment, particularly when you are talking about yourself. So let's say that you're in financial services, and one of the key adjectives that are associated with somebody who's a superstar in financial services is somebody who's analytical or quantitative. Well, you need to make sure that your behavior is consistent. What does that mean? When you're in a meeting and people are talking about something, your answer might be, what do the numbers say? I am focused on everything that's quantitative. What are the numbers telling us? The numbers always tell us a story. The numbers never lie. Or I'm a quantitative junkie, or let's analyze this from 3 ways, or I am thinking about this for 3 reasons, or I have 5 hypotheses. So you see, my whole language is around numbers and everything that I'm using. So when you're not in the room and someone says, well, tell me about Tia, they're gonna say, well, first of all, she's a numbers junkie. Let me just tell you about that. She's very quantitative. It's all about the numbers with her, which is exactly how you've been training people to think about you, because your language and your behavior is consistent. And if you want people to think that you are creative, then you can say, okay, I understand what the numbers are saying, but let's talk about the qualitative arguments. Let's talk about how we create this narrative and put it in the marketplace around these numbers. Let's be creative and think out of the box on how we can get a different outcome. We've been doing X, but how can we think out of the box? So your language, again, how you present yourself, how you present your ideas are all consistent around that one adjective of being creative. And when you're not in the room, that's how they're going to talk about you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that answer. Before we continue with more questions, I just want to welcome those who just joined this event, Advancing Your Career, a Power Lunch with Carla A. Harris. Once again, if you are enjoying this conversation, please applaud, please drop hearts. And as I said before, if you are good with emojis and there's a necklace of pearls, please drop that as well. Yay! I said I was going to wear as many as I could for all your tidbits.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So I'm going to ask two more questions, and then Sister Diara, she's going to ask the remaining questions because we like to share and be sisterly here, okay? So the next question is, what is the best knowledge to possess when advancing your career? Practical knowledge, formal knowledge, or is it about who you know?
I have to tell you, I'm a fan of the practical and the who you know, because as you can see from the pearls that I gave you, the relationships matter a lot. And I think that one of the mistakes that we make is focusing so much on the practical. I want to make sure I'm an expert. I'm the best at X. But at the end of the day, the decisions as you move up the ladder are very, very qualitative. People aren't looking as much at the actual facts, the black and white of whether or not you deliver on the work, because at that point, when you're getting more senior, there is an assumption that of course you can deliver on the work, but there are probably 3 or 4 other people that can deliver on the work as well. So it's really going to be about the relationships that you have with someone that will give them the comfort to spend their currency on you behind closed doors. So I'm not going to tell you that, you know, the black and white being an expert at something is more important. It is very important earlier in your career, but as you get more senior, there is far more gray. So think about it like this: black and white and shades of black and white as you move up until you are right in the gray. And there is where the relationships dominate.
Thank you. And my final question for today is, and this one I'm sure everyone thought about when you were talking about the mentor and the sponsor, is how should you approach someone to be your mentor or sponsor?
Yes. So the mentor, as I said, needs to be somebody that knows you very well. So often mentoring relationships happen naturally as you build a relationship with someone and you get more and more comfortable with them and you start to share more intimate details of your career with. So often you don't have to say, hey, Tia, would you be my mentor? The relationship that we've had where you actually know me and you've heard a lot about my career sort of sets us up in that scenario. Now, let's say you want me or somebody to be your mentor, then you can start to say, I'd like to build a relationship with you. Right now, I know you can only be an advisor because you don't know me that well, but I'd like to build a relationship over time that hopefully might lead us to a mentoring relationship. If in fact you have to ask that question, that's how you do it. Sponsor, on the other hand, is very different. As I said, nirvana is if somebody will take you under their wing and say, you know what, T, I'm gonna make sure you're successful in this environment. But for many women and many folks of color, it doesn't happen that easily. So sometimes you have to exercise your power and ask. And I'll tell you how I did it. I was up for a big promotion and I realized that I could not with confidence say who was going to pound the table for me behind closed doors. And that is what a sponsor does. So here's the profile of a good sponsor: someone who is within the organization, someone who has a seat at the decision-making table, and somebody who has some juice, i.e. they can get it done for you. Okay. So I went to someone who had that profile and I said, it's really important for me to get promoted this year. And you and I both know that somebody has to be in that room pounding the table on your behalf in order for something like this to happen. You know me, you know my work, you know all the client feedback on me, and I think you will do a terrific job. So I'm hoping you will sponsor me when that conversation about my candidacy for that promotion comes up. Now, the person sort of humbled, but then he ultimately said yes. The reason why that's an important conversation for you to have is, let's go back to the pearl. You don't ask, you don't get it, right? And there's no guarantee that he would have willingly spoke up on my behalf when my name came up, right? But now that I've asked him and he said yes, he would do it, I trusted that he would follow through. Now, I do believe in insurance. So I went to somebody else who was a key influencer to other people in that room so that when my name came up, if he started to say something, he would have a little bit of an amen corner in the room, right? But it's important that you ask the question. You should never be guessing, you know, who's going to pound the table when my name comes up, you should always make sure that you have it clear in your mind who might do that, and that at least you've exercised your power to ask that question in the way that I just did.
Okay, well, thank you so much. De'Ara is going to ask some questions of you, and perhaps some that we received from the Facebook live chat. And then I'll come back and close us out. And before I close us out, of course, President Drema L. Wodman, she will have some closing remarks as well. So thank you so much for your time, Carla.
Excellent. Thank you,
De'Ara,
Tia. I hope you
go
guys
ahead.
are giving my girl Tia some hearts and some love out there in virtual land.
Thank you so much, Sister Tia. We have some great questions that came in from the audience. So Carla, you mentioned a lot about taking risk and even mitigating risk, which is great. But what happens when you may be into a situation and you need to repair a damaged reputation to restore trust and gain advancement within your career?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, if you've made a mistake, own the fact that you've made a mistake. You should always own your narrative around that, but do not hang your head, because there's not a person alive that has not made a mistake. Making a mistake does not make you special. What makes you special is how and if you get up. So the first thing you should do is to go to somebody who is a sponsor and somebody who's also an influencer in the organization, and have two separate conversations and say, oh my gosh, that was a huge mess up, a huge mess up. You know, when I look back, you know, I'm not entirely sad that it happened, because as horrible as it was, here are the three things that I learned. And here's how I'm going to take those learnings and really try to push forward. I'd love to get any advice from you about what I've just said. You know, do you agree? Do you not agree? Is something else I should think about? But I'd love to get some feedback from you. Now, the fact that you've gone to a sponsor, somebody who has juice in the organization, and you've gone to an influencer, somebody who can influence other people, now the message from both of them is like, wow, you know what? De'Ara realized she made a big mistake, but she is determined to turn this thing around, and I think she can do it. And then you have to be consistent around your behavior. So remember, there's nothing that you could have done, I don't care how bad it is, that is irreparable. You have an opportunity to turn it around if you are still in that organization. They didn't fire you, so you got a shot.
Very true. Always believe in second chances.
Yep.
Another great audience question asks, how do you know when you may be blurring the lines between authenticity and unprofessionalism? So I know you mentioned earlier about, you know, being your true authentic self and showing up to work in your true authentic self, and even having different, you know, quote unquote personalities, like the Carla, the singer, the Carla, the speaker. But how do you know when you may be blurring those lines between authenticity and unprofessionalism?
Yes, that is an outstanding question. And here's the deal. You are smart enough to be able to read your environment. You are smart enough to be able to see your environment. Every job has a uniform. So you have made the authentic decision to go into that environment, and you know what it requires. So there really shouldn't be a question in your mind around your authenticity and whether or not it's bordering on unprofessionalism, because you understand what professionalism looks like in the environment that you chose. You made the decision to go there. Now, if you do have questions, now's the time to go to somebody internally in the organization that you trust, or even a sponsor, and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about wearing, or this is what I'm thinking about doing, or this is how I'm thinking about wearing my hair, and I'm not quite sure. You know, people say that this is okay, but I'm not sure. What are your thoughts? Now's the time to leverage your network, exercise your power, and ask the question. But my guess is you know what is professional already by your observations in that organization. But if you're unsure, ask the question and take the feedback you get, especially from people that you respect. And let me just give one other point on this, De'Ara, about this authenticity point. Let's say that you are a person, let's say that I was a person that likes to dress down all the time, right? Well, in investment banking, there's a uniform, right? People wear very expensive tailored suits, or they wear designer suits, or back in the day when I first started, most of the women wore silk dresses or gray suits and a silk scarf. That was a uniform. Just like when I was 16 years old, I had my McDonald's uniform, right? Every environment has a uniform. It would have been an inauthentic decision for me to say, well, shoot, I'm smart. And you know what? I don't need to dress like that. I can wear a pair of Dockers and, you know, a blazer, and that's just, you know, they ought to take me like I want to come because I'm smart and I'm going to contribute. Inauthentic, right? The environment demands a uniform. And if I want to play in that environment, I am saying yes to that uniform. If I do not want to say yes to that uniform, then I need to find another environment where I can deploy those skills. And I really wanted to make that clear because so often we make terrible decisions about the person and what we're wearing as we walk into these environments where the uniform is clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Carla. I just want to take a quick second to remind the audience that you can continue to invite your friends in the last couple of minutes here and come and get Carla's pearls because she's still dropping more and more pearls. Going back to the audience questions. So we have a question from one of our very own NCBW sisters, Tiffany Lee. Tiffany, thanks so much for submitting this question. She asks, what if you are mid-career and you haven't leveraged your performance or relationship currency? How do you catch up?
Yes, thank you for that question, Tiffany. You can always catch up. So you're in that environment, you clearly have good performance, which is why you still have your seat. So now it's time to be intentional, and I'm going to give you a 90-day assignment. In 90 days, I want you to find 6 people that you want to build a relationship with. And in those 90 days, you need to have 3 touches with those 6 people. So you can try to touch one on Monday, one on Wednesday, one on Friday, and do it again, so that you have touched them 6 times. And when I say touch, a 10-minute coffee, an exchange before you start a larger Zoom, maybe you exchange emails, but find a way to have some interaction. That's how you start to build up your relationship currency. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Building relationships is just a function of frequency of touch. I'm going to ask you to think about the people in your personal life that are in your relationships. How did you build those relationships? Maybe you stood in the line together when you were registering for college. Maybe you sit next to each other all the time at, one of your meetings. Maybe you guys shop together. Whatever it is, the more you're with that person, the more the relationship grows. Same thing in your professional environment. Find ways to have those touches. And here's the secret. In a corporate environment, it's very light touches. And people feel like they know you. They don't have to know the color that you have on your toes, that you painted your toes, right? But if you just, so what'd you do for lunch? Or how did you guys enjoy the holidays? Did you guys have a chance to travel anywhere in your tri-state area? How did COVID affect your holidays with your family? So much to ask that will give you an opportunity to have a quick exchange. And those light touches matter as investments in relationships.
No, I think that's so important, especially in this virtual environment today. I'm going to take that 90-day assignment myself, and I welcome the audience to post any touch moments that you can think of or that you've had, any great ideas, because we can all share and use that knowledge. Someone else from the audience asked or stated that they were recruited for a new job a few months before COVID, and they're finishing grad school this June. So not being able to network in person, how do they parlay their new degree into a position at their job that's not directly related, but is a much higher extension of their current position?
Yes. So if you've already been hired for a position, then you're going to probably have to start in that particular role. But what I would start to do is I'd go back to the people that recruited me, and I would start to use them to build other relationships in the organization. So I say, Tiara, I'm really looking forward to joining the team. But I understand that Tom. I'd like to get a chance to meet Tom. Can you connect us? Because I'm a new person coming in. I'd like to start to build a relationship with them, blah, blah, blah. So pick 3 or 4 people that you can start to build that relationship with. And then from there, I would try to make sure that I position myself for another opportunity. It may be very difficult, depending on the organization, to take a job offer that they've already given you and now go for something else. I would recommend that you start in that role, knock the cover off the ball, and continue to work those relationships and give yourself, 6 to 12 months to take that and leverage it into another opportunity. But in this environment, I think it may be very difficult to say, I know I accepted a role in A, but I really want that job over there in B. No, I think you're going to have to put some points on the board, create that performance currency, and then use that currency, spend it to go get that other role.
Awesome. So we have one more question from the audience so far. And this is probably one of my favorite questions that I've seen too. Thanks so much for the person that asked it. The question is, when is it time to move on? As in when you're not advancing in your current company, when do you know is the right time to move on to something else?
Yes, love this question. So let's go back to the pearl that I talked about, the agenda, having your own agenda, the seat and the house. So now the seat, remember, is the job that you're doing. And the reasons that you go into that seat is that you want certain skill set, you want certain exposure, certain experience, you want to meet certain people, build a network. So now that you're feeling like, well, this is not working for me, let's go back and look at the seat and ask those questions. Now you should say, have I fully prosecuted this seat? Have I gotten everything I could possibly get out of that seat? If the answer is yes, then now you ask yourself, well, let's talk about the house. Let's talk about the company. Do I still like the career trajectory? I.e., is there an opportunity for me to move up? Do I like the platform that I'm on? Do I have a voice? Do I have a sponsor? Have I asked the question about moving? So you say that there are no opportunities, but I have to now ask you, did you ask the question? Did you say to someone that you were interested in being promoted, or were you waiting for somebody to tap you on the shoulder, right? You have to make sure that the organization understands your aspirations and what you would like to do. I can't tell you how many times I said this to somebody and they finally went and said to their boss, I'm interested in being promoted and I'd like to do A, B, and C. And the response from the boss, oh, I didn't know you had an interest in that. I know. So you're sitting there thinking to yourself, how could they not know? But you didn't ask, you don't get. So before you move to another organization, I would ask, have you fully exploited the opportunities to move within that organization, because you have the most currency in that organization? They already know that you're good. They already know that you're smart. Have you traded on that currency? Now, let's say you tried. Let's say you say, no. I'm not going to be able to move out of here because I've asked and blah, 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 blah. Okay, then you've answered your own question. Now it's time to leverage that experience and move into another opportunity. But don't run if you haven't fully tried there, because that inability to leverage your currency is going to follow you to the next opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. I love that advice. So you talked a lot about, again, bringing your authentic self into the workplace, really being your true self. But how can you stand out and set yourself apart in the workplace?
Therein lies your own answer. That's why I said nobody can be you the way that you can be you. You are already standing out if you are bringing excellence to your game every single day. Don't think that people aren't noticing. And the more that you build relationships and people get to hear how articulate you are, how easy it is to talk to you, what a great team player you are, how committed you are to making sure that you knock the cover off the ball in everything that you do, how you're fully taking advantage of the organization around you. If you don't think people are going to talk about that, you got another thought coming. But they have to see that. They have to hear you saying those kinds of things, and you are automatically standing out. And if you happen to be one of the few women in your organization, or you happen to be one of the few people of color, you are already differentiated. You have to do even less work to stand out because people see you and they are always looking.
Awesome. Absolutely. So we have another great audience question. Someone is trying to get to the C-suite by the end of the year. What are some pearls that they need to include in their strategy to get there?
Yes, and here's where the sponsor pearl is going to be extraordinarily important. It's January, so you need to sit down with your sponsor and you need to say, listen, I'm really interested in that particular role. Here are the 3 reasons why I think I'd be particularly good at that role. Here are the things that I've done that I think have made me prepared. So I want to sit down and talk to you about how we strategize to make sure that I get there. Who else do we have to make complicit in this plan in order for me to get there? Because I want this. Right? So now it's time to start talking to the sponsor strategically about how you do that. And that's the way I would get that done. Now, I would do that internally, and I would also do that externally, right? Because if nothing else, trying to go for it externally will give you some practice, right? But going for it externally may also give you an opportunity. And you have to ask yourself, if you don't get it internally, what are you prepared to do? Which is another reason why I suggest that you also start to understand what else is out there.
Awesome. Great advice. So I know that you've, had tons of speaking engagements where you've spoken to your younger self, and someone did ask, for those new to corporate America, what advice would you give to them that you wish someone gave to you?
Oh, yes. The number one thing is own your power. I was so focused on making sure that I was a good junior person and that I would do everything that I was told, and nobody could see that nobody could work harder than me. And it was so easy for me to unconsciously give away my power, forget the fact that I was really smart, forget the fact that I learned things pretty easily, forget the fact that I always deliver and that I never give up. And I lost sight of those things in the first few assignments when I had a really tough boss and things really didn't go well, right? And so I gave away my power because my confidence was shattered when things didn't go as well as they had always gone in my life. And so I tell people, own your power. Don't ever forget what you're bringing to the table. You were hired into that role because people thought you could make rain. So make rain. I don't care how confused you feel sometimes. I don't care how much you say, oh my gosh, this is hard. I haven't done this before. There have been many firsts in your life. There have been many things that you have done for the first time. And guess what? You did it before. You'll be able to do it again. Those are the facts. Those are the truths that you should focus on, not the distractions like, oh my, I've never been in this kind of environment before. Oh, this is a very competitive environment. Oh, I'm the only one that looks like me. All of those are distractions. Truths are, you beat out a lot of people for that seat. They chose you, and they didn't choose you because you're a woman. They didn't choose you because you were Black. They chose you because you were the best person for the job, full stop. That's a period, not a comma. And you should say to yourself, that I know that I'm all this, and I've done a lot of things for the first time. Oh, by the way, on the off chance that I fail, it won't be the first time and it won't be the last time. There have been things that I've done that I've been disappointed by, but I live to tell it, right? So also, don't be intimidated by the fear of making a mistake. Extract the lesson, what you learned, and use it and invest in your next try.
Awesome. Absolutely. I love that. So we have another question from one of our very own NCBW sisters, Sister Kimberly Rudd. Her question is, what's something a seasoned professional should do now during COVID-19 to strengthen their career, more so geared towards women ages 50 and above?
Yes, I'm going to say that for somebody who's seasoned, you should take a blank sheet of paper and say, if I was starting all over, what would I do? And I don't mean all over in your career, but if I was starting all over, even doing the thing that I'm doing now, because let's say you love it and you'd like to keep doing it, but you should challenge yourself and say, how would I do it differently? How would I innovate? Anybody who's been doing whatever they've been doing for 20 years plus ought to constantly be thinking about, what does me 2.0 look like every 2 years? The rate of innovation has gone from 10 years to 5 years to 2 years to now barely 12 months. And the rules are getting rewritten. So you should be asking yourself, how do I do what I'm doing differently? If you are 50 and you have been doing something for 30 years, now you should be saying, well, what do I want to do next? How do I want to take everything that I've done and now go off and do whatever that is? The problem is, Diara, most of us haven't taken the time to think about what that next is. So the challenge that I'm going to give to the person that's in virtual land who is 50 plus, I'm going to tell you that you have until the end of February to figure out 3 things that you might do that you would just enjoy, that would make you jump up out of the bed in the morning or can't go to sleep at night because you would really love to do that. And then I'm going to tell you to think about how what you've done relates to those 3 things and how you might connect the dots in a narrative that will give somebody the opportunity to let you do that.
Awesome. Yes, the world is changing so much. That's excellent advice. So Carla, just to ask you a little bit about your own self. So, you change up your style, your look, your hair. How do you innovate yourself?
Yeah, I tell you, I have been challenging myself, Diara, to do the same thing. Blank sheet of paper. How are you thinking about it, Carla? How do you define 2.0? And it really, the good news, one of the pieces of good news out of the environment that we've been now is that it's given me an opportunity to really think about what I enjoy most about what I've done for the last 30 years and how I might use that to now parlay that into something new. So I'm going to give you an example. I started thinking about this pre-COVID. And one of the things that I loved about my capital markets role when I had that role was that I had to help companies think about how to tell their story to the market, how to create the illusion of scarcity so everybody would want to buy the stock. So it really was about how to articulate the narrative. Well, now I have had the opportunity to work with Morgan Stanley to build a multicultural innovation lab where I'm working with very early stage companies who in these unbelievable entrepreneurs who have these great ideas, but they've never been to the public or the private market. So now I'm taking that same skill, which I love doing, helping companies go public, helping companies now tell their story so they can get to the public market, you know, in a few years. So that's what I mean about taking the best of what you've done and applying it to something that's innovative and something that is now and going forward in the market.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear you reflect on yourself. Thanks so much for that tidbit of information.
Thank you.
Would you say that you're the most innovative sister friend in your group?
You know, I wouldn't say that I'm the most, but I certainly am one of them. And I constantly challenge my friends to sort of, you know, think about what next looks like. The other thing, De'Ara, I have to tell you, my other aha over this period is that I don't feel like I have played big enough. You know, for whatever success you think I have had, I now feel that I did not play big enough. So that's my new thing. Carla, are you playing big enough? Are you thinking big enough, right? Are you reaching far enough? And wherever you think enough is, can you go a little more? Can you do it, right? So that's what I'm challenging myself with. And that is what I'm challenging my friends with. Are you thinking big enough? Because, you know, we've been socialized, frankly, as women and women of color to play it safe.
No, that's absolutely true. You've definitely been playing it big enough for sure. I will say that.
Well, wait and see, girl, wait and see.
Thanks so much for answering those questions, Carla.
Thank you.
Pass it back to you and you can take us away.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Before I close out, we do have 3 minutes remaining, but I wanted to give our Madam President, Dreama L. Woltman, an opportunity to make any remarks that she might like.
Good afternoon. Wasn't that a great presentation? I am so proud that the Chicago Metropolitan chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women was able to bring that presentation to you today. And if we were in a face-to-face environment at this moment, we would be giving Carla a standing ovation. So let's raise our virtual hands. Let's clap. Let's send heart emojis. Let's do whatever we need to do to let her know that we appreciate all of the pearls of wisdom that she gave us today. So let us clap, let us raise our virtual hands, and let us send heart emojis. We thank our presenter, our awesome presenter, Carla Harris, for her passion and for providing us with exactly what we needed during this moment in time. With the state of the current job situation, many have had to reinvent, rethink, and reinvest in their way of thinking. During this presentation, Carla provided us with the tools to meet the many challenges faced, whether you are just starting out in your career, whether you want to grow in your current position or chosen area of endeavor, or whether you want to do something entirely different. Many good strategies, pearls of wisdom, and insight were shared with you today. This was only an hour presentation, and Carla certainly could not have shared all that she knows in 1 hour. She just barely touched the surface. So, because you have been an excellent audience, Morgan Stanley has provided 50 copies of Carla's book, Strategize to Win, the new way to start out, step up, or start over in your career. The first 50 participants who completes the assessment at the end of this presentation will be provided with a copy. If you are not lucky enough to get a copy, it is available on Amazon, as well as her previous book, Expect to Win, 10 proven strategies for thriving in the workplace. We would like to thank Morgan Stanley for their sponsorship. And of course, we would like to thank you, our viewing audience. The Chicago Metropolitan chapter is dedicated to advocate for Black women and girls in the areas of economics, health, education, and public policy and advocacy. If you like this presentation, and I know that you did, please join us for some upcoming events on Facebook Live. On Sunday, January 24th at 2 p.m., we will present the policing of Black women And on January 30th at 3 p.m., we will present part 2 of Healthy New You, Healthy New Year. To stay informed about our programs, please like us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Again, we thank you, and please make it a great day. Thus ends our presentation.